Hi, I'm Tim Bader from ergonomictoolbox.com, and today I'm going to review the GameBall, which is a trackball made by an independent company of the same name. Before I continue, I want to say thank you to the GameBall company for sending me this device for review. Although I've been able to get one for free, I'm not being paid for this review. It won't affect my review score. I'll take into account all the pros and cons, including the ergonomics for its intended use. I've had a number of trackballs and ergonomic mice over the years, but this is my first premium trackball, so I've been excited to try it out. I tend to go for the middle of the road in terms of price and comfort. In general, that's good enough to get me through a day at work for a reasonable price. A GameBall is a premium product with a price tag to match, which I'll come back to later on in this review. So the trackball itself, if you saw my initial impressions video, you'll already have seen this, but for the sake of completeness, on the GameBall you'll find firstly various buttons and sliders on both sides. There are 3 main buttons on either side for general use, as well as 2 more buttons on top, in front of and behind the ball for changing the settings. You'll also find a touch slider on either side, the vertical and horizontal scroll bars. The vertical scroll takes the place of the middle scroll wheel you'll find on most mice, but which are frequently absent from many trackballs, so it's good to see them incorporated here. Finally, you have the ball itself, which is relatively small compared to other trackballs. Does that affect its performance? Stay tuned to find out. The proof is, of course, in the using, so I've spent a while trying it out, and what with one thing or another, I've ended up with over a month's worth of usage. The first thing the quick start guide that comes in the box says is to watch the Getting Started video on their YouTube channel. I dutifully went to the link and began to watch, realising shortly afterwards that the Getting Started video is nearly 40 minutes long. Now, the pro is that it tells you pretty much everything you might want to know about your new device. It talks about the basics, settings, how to maintain it, advanced options, and how to get further support, so it's extremely comprehensive. On the other hand, it's very quiet and I had to turn up my volume to the max to hear anything properly. I couldn't sit through the whole thing in one go because I had things to do. Well, at least it has chapter markings on YouTube, so you can watch it in segments if you want, which is what I did. But some of the initial basics is really about why they designed a trackball for gaming, which takes up about 5 or 6 minutes, which I think they could have done with cutting out. For most people, I can't really see them watching this all the way through when they just want to plug it in and get going. For future iterations, I'd like to see them split the video up into much smaller chunks and tutorials and boost the volume at the very least. Better still, I think there ought to be more in the quick start guide to make the initial setup as seamless as other devices on the market. Now, all that said, the GameBall is completely plug and play with no additional software required, and it'll remember its settings from one laptop or PC to another. I currently have an Elecom Huge trackball for my day-to-day work, which does require software to get the most out of it and to utilise all the buttons, so I was interested to see how the GameBall would work out and how it would compare. I tried it out on both a Windows laptop and a MacBook Air. I have to use the Windows machine for my main job for 4 days a week, while I prefer to use my MacBook for my work on Ergonomic Toolbox and my other website. The good news is that on Windows the GameBall connected first time. Oddly though, when I checked in the mouse settings, Windows seemed to identify it as a keyboard. However, it worked on that fine without a hitch. The GameBall is wired with a standard USB connector, so I had to use an adapter to fit my MacBook, which only has a USB-C connection. Fortunately, I already had one, so it wasn't an issue for me. macOS also thought the GameBall was a keyboard and even displayed a dialog ready to configure one. But it also said that if it wasn't actually a keyboard, I could quit the dialog, which of course I did. Again, the GameBall worked fine. I was able to test both left and right-handed operation. It's set to right-handed by default out of the box. Most left-handers like me are at least partially ambidextrous, hence why I was able to do this. The button to swap between hands is on the front of the GameBall. You hold it down for 3 seconds until you see the lights turn off and on again briefly. The light is on the back here. The lights do look pretty and you can customise the colours, but they do also serve a purpose. And I didn't realise until I came to do it that this button is actually touch sensitive. That means you're not really holding it down, it's more of a tap and hold like you'd do on your phone or tablet. So what's it like in actual usage? Well, it's a finger operated trackball where you use 1 or 2 fingers on the ball. The thumb performs the main clicks, and either your second, ring or little fingers operate the right click and other buttons depending on your grip. I tend to use two fingers on the ball, so my ring finger usually does the right click. If you use one finger on the ball, you're likely to use your second finger here. The ball movement is extremely smooth. Initially there was a tiny bit of sound when moving the ball quickly or for longer or larger movements, but it doesn't appear to negatively affect the cursor movement, and it seems to have disappeared, to be honest, after a couple of days' use. I will say up front that once I broke it in, I've never had a trackball with ball movement quite as smooth as this one, which I'm extremely pleased about considering the price point. Now the buttons themselves, there's 3 buttons on either side, as I said earlier, one stacked directly above the other. The top button is the largest and reaches almost to the front of the device. The bottom one is smaller and set slightly back from that. And the middle button is just a slither and it's set further back still. Now, you'd expect the largest button to be the left click, but it isn't. It's actually the bottom button instead. However, I found in practice that's where my thumb naturally sits, which made it quite comfortable for me. The Quick Start guide explains how to swap these buttons around should you wish to do so. However, I stuck with the default configuration and will continue with that in mind for the rest of this review. The button functions will vary depending obviously whether you select left or right-handed operation, or therefore refer to the thumb side and the opposite or finger side. Just remember that your thumb always operates the left click and you're good to go. On the thumb side, the bottom button is your left click, as I said, the middle is the middle mouse button, and the top is the back button for use in programs like your browser. On the opposite or finger side, the top is the right click, the middle is precision mode, which I'll come back to in a second, and the bottom is the forward button, again in your browser or another appropriate program that uses it. The precision mode, when you click on this button, it slows the cursor right down. It becomes much easier to click on small or tricky to hit items on the screen. I have to be honest, I'm not sure how often I would use this function, especially in fast-moving games, but in my day job I write Power BI reports, and I found the odd occasion where precision mode helped me with a tricky visual that just didn't want to be placed quite how I wanted it. You might think of a better games use for it, but I imagine that it could be useful in slower-paced building type games like City Skylines, where sometimes placing roads accurately can be a bit of a chore. I really like the inclusion of the precision button. I just think it will take most people some time to get used to it and remind themselves that it's actually there in the first place. I also mentioned that there's 2 scroll sliders, a vertical and a horizontal one, and they have 2 modes. There's a continuous scroll, the default, and another mode called linear scroll. You swap between them by a single tap on the front settings button. Personally, I found the default continuous scroll far too sensitive, but the linear scroll worked nicely for me. I've heard a lot of people worrying that being a touch-sensitive slider, that they might accidentally send the cursor or the scroll bar flying. However, the Quick Start guide tells me that when you move the ball, the scroll pad's automatically disabled and vice versa, and I found that hasn't been an issue for me at all. Other functions, I've already mentioned the front setting button to switch scroll modes, but if you tap and hold the same button for 3 seconds, that's what swaps you between your left and right-handed operation. The back settings button changes the light colour on the back with a single tap. More importantly, with a 3-second tap and hold, it'll change the cursor sensitivity and the light will flash to show that it's changed. The number of times the light flashes indicates the sensitivity, between 1 flash for 400 CPI and up to 5 flashes for 3000. For functionality alone, I think that they've shown off the premium nature of the GameBall by packing in so many options directly in hardware, which I really like. Of course, the big question is, how good are the ergonomics? Overall, I'd say it's not bad at all, pretty good. I tend to do all my gaming on a console with a controller, and I only play a few real-time strategy or similar games on PC or Mac. Hence, I'd need to see how it goes in extended gaming use before I could give a firm ergonomic recommendation for its intended purpose. Now, again, my expectation from previous mice and trackballs I've used was that the button configuration would be symmetrical between the 2 sides, but that's not the case here. However, in actual use, I discovered that it made much more sense than I thought it would when I first read the instructions. In fact, from an ergonomic standpoint, I think the choice of button functions is just right, and it proved to be much more comfortable with the left and right clicks being where they are compared to those older trackballs. You wouldn't want to be right-clicking with your little pinky finger on a regular basis, and that's precisely what the GameBall avoids. It relegates less frequent functions like forward and back to less used fingers and reduces the number of times you have to move your thumb a larger distance to reach the relevant button. In other words, after only a short time of use, I gained an immediate respect for the folks who designed this trackball. In my opinion, they thought about not only the overall form factor of the device, but precisely where all the elements should be placed for real humans. For me personally, the only thing missing is the ability to customise individual buttons. My Evoluent vertical mouse and Elecom Huge trackball are customised so that the middle mouse button performs a double click when I click it once. That makes a massive difference ergonomically for me to the number of clicks I have to do every single day. I can understand why GameBall have done this. They've opted for everything being in firmware on the device itself. It would probably require them to develop their own software for that, which, being a small company, may be a step too far at this stage of their growth. To be fair, the advanced section of their introduction video includes how you can use third-party software to customise this device further. However, I prefer it if it were baked into the device itself. Perhaps they could review the firmware for this possibility in the future. All that said, it's really the only con I can think of, and in this case it's quite personal to me, so please don't let that criticism put you off. It's still a really good device from an ergonomic standpoint, even if I'm not completely confident of the gaming side of it quite yet. In terms of price, it'll set you back £148, which is approximately $180 US. For comparison purposes, my Evoluent vertical mice, which I regard as being on the higher range of the middle of the road pricing, were bought for around £90 to £100 or $110 to $120. Currently, I believe you can only get GameBall direct from the company. It's not on Amazon yet, as far as I'm aware, but I'll put the link to their website below so you can take a quick look for yourself. However, you can pay with alternatives like PayPal or Google Pay if you're worried about leaving your card details with a small independent firm. In conclusion then, the GameBall, like many trackballs, has some pros and some cons. On the cons side, other than the functions for swapping hands, the built-in options to reprogram the buttons to your liking are quite limited. It may take some getting used to if coming from a mouse, but to be honest that's the same for any trackball. It's also quite expensive compared to other trackballs on the market. On the pro side, it's ambidextrous, it's true plug and play, no software is required for the additional buttons. It retains its settings across devices and platforms. It has extremely smooth ball motion and tracking, the best I've ever experienced. It's got good ergonomics, and although I said it was expensive, the pro to that is that it boasts a lot of premium functionality for the price. Overall, I heartily recommend this trackball as a premium device, but I would need to spend more time with it gaming to give it the full thumbs up for its intended purpose. That said, in the short time I used it for RTS games like Star Wars Empire at War and Wargame Airland Battle, I had no trouble at all and it was very comfortable indeed. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about the GameBall. Have you got one for gaming? If so, how are you finding it? Or are you intending on getting one? In which case, what is it in particular about the GameBall that you like the look of? If you're watching this on YouTube and like this review, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and even better, check out my website at ergonomictoolbox.com. I'll see you next time.